Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Zagreb, Croatia. It's the Grand Chess Tour. It's the third day of the Rapid. And as always, I'm going to take you through some of the best games of the day, and then I'll tell you all the standings. Also, the last time I recorded this recap, for some reason, my screen froze for like 2 seconds, and I had a really dumb face. In the beginning, well, I always have a really dumb face, but I had a really dumb face at the beginning of that recap, and I'm just recording this one, so I have no idea what's in store for me. Maybe it will freeze, maybe it won't. Now, first game of the day, Jan Krzysztof Duda versus Giri Anand. This is a long game, so buckle up. We have a Rui Lopez. We have an invitation to play the Berlin. Vishy's also doing quite well. He's in second place, so he's trying to maintain his position. D3, anti-Berlin. So we're going to have a long game. C3, both sides castle. And now rather than D6, which we've seen many times, we see D5. This is one of the ways to play this position. It very quickly creates an imbalance. And after knight takes d5, if, for example, takes, and takes, I mean, this looks quite promising for white, but black has sufficient counterplay in the form of the bishop pair and a lot of open lines. Like, for example, it looks like white should just be very happy here with something like this, but I just boot you out, and then I have a dominant e-file. I bring out my bishop. Also, bishop a6 is a possibility. So, but Vishy actually takes with the queen, which, I'm not gonna lie, I've, like, never seen this before. Maybe there's other positions where the queen comes out like this, but this is quite rare to me. And, Duda starts making attacking moves. So everything he's doing, he's trying to get quick development, defends his only weakness, and now Vishy plays queen d7, and it's very clear that he's ready to line up against this. But this move kind of prevents this idea, because b5 would be too fast, dislodging the knight from the defense of this center pawn. And because bishop a3 is played, now Vishy has to switch to a little bit more of a defensive minded setup, but he still finds a way to find a nice little tactic with the move b5. Now again, to the untrained eye, it looks like a takes b5, a b5, bishop b5 wins a pawn and has a pin, but the knight can move, attack your queen, and then fork you. And this is also a target if you were to take the knight. So bishop b3, and we kind of get to a point where the players have had enough shuffling, and now we get a lot of X's. X's meaning captures. First, we have a trade of knights. Then we have rook d3 and a trade of bishops. Then we have a trade of queens, so they just got tired of playing, basically. And a trade of pawns. Completely symmetrical structure. B, C, E, F, G, H. And knight bishop. Okay. Rook a6, knight e7, rook d2, but with two inaccurate rook moves. The 5-time world champion plays f5, and this is a problem. Because if you take, I take, then I play e4, and black is all of a sudden actually doing something in the position. So, Duda did it like this to try to win his pawn back. Vishy sacrificed the pawn to damage his pawn structure, then played knight d5, and after some brief trades, we got here. And Vishy's got a rook versus knight and bishop, but he has 2 extra pawns. And the problem is his 2 extra pawns are both passers. That's a really big problem. The further down the board they get with the rooks behind them, the worse this is going to be. Now the question is, for whom does a rook trade improve the position? The answer is actually for black in many instances. Like, if you can somehow get a rook off the board, bring the king to help the pawns, black just wins without really any fight. The issue is, though, that white will not do that. White will keep the rook to pressure the pawns. White is bringing all the pieces. And at some point, you will probably have to give away one of your pawns. Because, look, you can get to a situation where you have everything protected, but then you will never be able to make progress. Like, you can play b3, I will blockade you on these 2 squares. It's going to be really hard to move. So what Vishy does is he sacrifices the pawn, because there's this. But in the time it takes Duda to get the pawn, the king has now walked closer. And he plays the super important move e4. Now white's pieces are absolutely dominated, and frankly we'll be checking in for some sort of medication to cure their depression soon, because the knight is just not cutting it. And now he takes some space on the other side of the board, because obviously takes some space away from Duda, and takes even more space away from Duda. And now we really have the position from where Vishy will apply his pressure. He plays rook f8, looking for rook f3, which would just be devastating. So we have king e2 with the intention to play this move, except after knight f2, that doesn't actually guard the pawn at all. Here, Vichy could have just taken. And after king takes f2, king c4 attacking the bishop, this is over. This is simply over because the king walks over here. So for example, bishop f6, king d3, let's say king let's say king e1, king c2, king e2, like let's say I just, try to. You play b2, and because you took all this space away from me, my king can never get active, and you still have me boxed in. King b3, where am I going? King d1 or something? Well, then you get closer. And this is called like shouldering. You just shoulder my king away. It's actually kind of shocking. I mean, I'm assuming they had super low time, but I guess Vichy's plan had always been to go around back, which makes sense. So he just played this move. And I believe a move or two later, he could have had another opportunity to do this. Right here, he could have played rook g2 to try to like bring the rook and king. And if knight f2, I believe rook f2 even here is winning. Or king c4 first. And I believe now you can like take. There's some variation where you can just take on f2. Is it here? Yes, it is here. This is still winning. Unbelievable, because the king is so dominated. If bishop takes pawn, just b2. So Vichy ends up missing this opportunity, and it allows Duda to get back into the game. Now, the position is still utter chaos. I mean, there's still a b and h pawn, but this is a very good defensive resource by Duda, realizing he can finally sacrifice because he has 2 pawns and the knight. And even here, practical chances are with black. The question is how? How do you win this? Okay, he goes rook a2, king f4, rook a4 check, king f3, rook a3. Now notice the king is dominated by pawn and knight. King can't get closer. Okay, how are we going to do this? Is it h3? What is the only winning move? Apparently, the only winning move here, the idea to win the game, is to play rook c4. And white is in a zugzwang. Anywhere that white moves, white loses. So if white plays the move e6 here, king f6 attacks the knight and the pawn, and you're busted. If you move the knight to e4, for example, I bring my king forward again, you can't really guard this because if you play king f4, I go here, you can't possibly stop my pawn without losing your knight. So Vichy had to be patient with one move, and everything in white's position falls apart. If knight to h3, check, here, and rook to g3, forces the king to continue to defend, and now it's over because you're able to win the pawn and keep yours. Instead, we have the move h3, and that allows this move, which disconnects the pieces, and now he comes back to give a check, and yeah, this is a serious problem. And the white king finally makes it back, and the game ends in a draw. So, I mean, Vichy gets super, super close, but Duda, very resourceful defender. And you know what's funny? This was the most exciting game probably in the first 10 games. The first 2 rounds of 5 games each, 2 times 5 is 10, they were all draws, which is why they waited until the end, because in the final round of the day, there was blood. Not like actual blood. I don't think they like punched each other in the face, although I would definitely pay money to see that. They just played some exciting chess. First game I'd like to show you, young Krzysztof, again. Playing against Anton Korobov. So, we have a King's Indian defense. This is known as Samish. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but that's how I've always said it, Samish. With f3, bishop e3. Now, there's a lot of ways black can play this. He chooses to go on the queen side like this. With a6, b5 right away, but also rook b8 is played in some positions. The point is this. If you take... then you're just an idiot, because what are you doing? Why would... That's like buying a house and driving your own car through the wall. Like, oh, I don't... Yeah, no. So, g4. Now, he's basically, after like all of this, he's basically saying, look, Anton, you can take on c4, be my guest. But my attack is faster. You're never making it anywhere. Okay, rook b8, congratulations, this threatens nothing. Whereas if you had opened the rook the other way, he would have actually been targeting something a bit fragile. So, rook b8. Now, I would just go h4 here, but I'm not young Krzysztof. He also probably did not want to get met with this move, because the truth is that this is an attack, but... You know, that's like the way I can't even say words. I have to make sounds. Now, bishop h6 is... Now we're talking. This looks a little bit better. h4, there is no h5. The problem is that when the bishop ventures over here, you gotta be damn sure it's gonna be Why did he go... Wait, I'm sorry. Why would you put the bishop there and then come back? Like, I would think d5 or something. I mean, bishop e3 is not a blunder. Clearly, I need to learn from them, not be shocked by their moves. But this just is a loss of time, and Korobov plays this, and now the position's mightily unpleasant. Mightily unpleasant for white. Because you got a really tough decision. And Duda decides to go here, leaving both pawns to capture. Korobov takes, which now inherently activates the bishop in the corner. Takes here, and another tough choice. If you take on f6, I mean, again, this is literally like picking up the nearest blunt object and slamming yourself in the foot for no reason. No reason at all. Completely premeditated. Bishop c5, however, obviously there is this. So he goes here. They are both giving away bishops. Now the queen here is protected. So Duda plays queen f4. Both bishops are still hanging. Both bishops are still hanging, and the knight is hanging. Knight to b1, queen to... Yo, what is going on? Both pieces are just standing in the face of danger. fg4, queen c5, Duda plays the move b3. Now, this is one of the worst positions imaginable when you play against the King's Indian defense, because black has a King's Indian bishop, and 5 of your 6 pawns are on light squares. What are you doing? I mean, again, it's like buying a really expensive house and just leaving all the doors and windows open with a sign saying no one's home. Okay, that's like what Duda's doing. He's like, yeah, no one's home. Come, no alarm system. Just come on in. Whatever you like, you can take. Now, still the position is pretty complicated. Beyond all that, I mean, the truth is that after g5, like Korobov should have gone knight d7 to activate his bishop. He chose d5, a super confrontational move, literally just sacrificing a knight and killing his own bishop to open up white's king. I mean, this is super risky and kind of unnecessary, but it's still winning for black. Takes, check. Okay, where are we going? Only move, king to b2. b3, hello, we've arrived. There was something here that the computer wanted. I don't remember exactly what it was. Was it here? No, this is all normal. There's some moment the computer wants black to play like this move. I mean, like, I don't even... So that white cannot play h5 himself? I mean, I don't know. Shut up, computer. b3 is a great move. Knight c3. And now, the question is, in what order does black need to stack on the b file? He chooses to take first. This actually allows a trade of rooks, which you would think helps white. Because white needs less pieces on the board to not lose. And the truth is that because you killed your own bishop, now you also have back rank problems, and everything is protected, and I can hide my king in the corner. Duda chooses to guard like this, but the problem is you don't trade pieces with me now. And here, he would have won the game, Korobov, if he played check and king a1. If king a2, same thing, rook b8. But if king a1, it's very important you trade first, and then you play rook b8. The difference is as follows. When the queen departs, bishop f6 is going to be a capture, right? Now you'd say, what's the difference? Why can't I just play rook b8 now? Rook d2. And because you never traded off one of my rooks, queen b1 is not possible, right? But if you do it this way, and I play rook d2, then queen b1. And I lose, because you make a new queen and it's GG. So that's pretty savage. Korobov does rook b8 and then realizes that after this there is just rook d2 and he has no attack. So he plays rook b6 instead. But now I really make you question putting your bishop on h8. Because I've closed the center and I'm offering a queen trade. Of course you do not trade queens. Of course I protect checkmate. Of course you double up and try to win this pawn. Of course I play h5. And who's attacking who? Queen b7, rook d1, I take g6, and I go back. And you cannot prevent rook h8, king h8, queen h6, and queen g7 mate. So you sacrifice, I happily take, and I have 2 horses in the back, and you've got none. So Korobov resigned. I mean, just an absolutely ludicrous position. I mean, the guy attacked your knight, but just move the damn knight and keep the bishop open. Like, Korobov basically was up 4 rounds in an MMA 5-round fight and was winning 4 minutes of the 5th round and decided to do a spinning capoeira kick off the fence into a somersault and just got like boop, like bopped on the face, and like that was, I mean, ay ay ay, and Duda wins from the depths of hell, emerges twice now. Twice now in this recap. Now, game number 3. Anish, Giri, Vishy Anand, we have, it's a Catalan, so surprise, surprise, very, very solid and low-risk approach. Not because it's Anish, but because it's two super GMs playing. Bishop d2 looks for a trade, and by the way, if this looks confusing to you, why grandmasters give checks and go back, it's because you basically argue that your bishop is good here and this bishop is not. And you've won some, but don't play chess like this, okay? I want you all to try to be moving forward and making progress in your position, not just shuffling back and forth. I know they do it, but don't do it. Now, a lot of maneuvering in this game, kind of a unique approach by both players. So Vishy's playing the closed Catalan, basically. He hasn't taken on c4 and opened up the position. He plays c6, b6, which is solid, but frankly quite depressing. Anish allows the transformation of knight for dark squared bishop. All his pieces are now very nicely placed, and the question is, where is he going to put his rooks? Okay, he is going to put the f rook on c1, and again, when they do this, it's meta big brain strat. When you do it, it's why the hell did you leave this rook in the corner? The truth is that white actually has prospects to expand on the queen side and could use this rook over there. This is very common in these positions. Many Slav defense lines look like this. Also, bishop f1 or knight f1 to transfer a piece to the middle, very useful. Look at that. Beautiful play by Anish. Now the rook goes back because this is here. Queen d1. What are we doing, man? We in the words of Nate Diaz, we playing touch butt with that dork in the park. What are we doing here? What are all the pieces are just running in circles? Like, what's going on? A3. Okay, now I like this. This is, yes, Anish. This is my type of chess. I don't understand all of this shuffle stuff. H4, let's go. Queen f3, yes. Knight f1. Now, to Vishy's credit, he has meanwhile set up a really nice setup. I mean, he's got everything going on the c-file. This bishop is probably the worst light-squared bishop of all time, but we'll figure that out later. It's also a position where black cannot just play aggressively and kick you out, because the truth is you will end up with irreparable weaknesses everywhere. So these sacrifices are always looming. So knight g7, knight f5. And now the big question, do you trade knight for knight or bishop for knight? Now, see, Anish Giri is a smart man. He does not want to get a position where, like, for example, he doesn't want to trade off his active knight. It's a good knight. So he gives this. Anish Giri is a principled man. He sees a close position, so he goes for a situation where he has two knights versus two bishops. Bishops versus knights are usually advantageous, but not if the position is super close. Now, see, I'm a moron, so I, in this position, would have just taken with the knight, and then I would have just chugged along with h5. And if gf5, I would have just gone g4. You know, I would have just like a pig in mud or poop. You know, just rolling around. But Anish is a principled man, and that's really his. You know, and again, I would have just gone full caveman, but he's a super GM. He sees a free pawn, so he takes it. But now he's in a state of paralysis, and Vishy strikes back with this move. This is not just the blunder of a piece. The idea is to go rook d8 and pin the knight again to the queen. Knight to f6 check, king moves up to g7, takes. Now we have an endgame. d5, advanced pawn. King g7. Now, king g7 is a peculiar move. When I'm looking at this, I'm trying to figure out how to blockade the pawn. The problem is, I guess you really can't. And I guess Vishy played king g7 because he thought he had time to go f6. It's a very tough position. The machine wants this, and after d6, it wants this. It just doesn't even. It's like pretending this pawn doesn't even exist, which I just don't understand at all. Oh, well, now it's starting to think, and yeah, see, this is the problem with computers. They're like, I have an idea! And then you go there and the house is on fire and they're like, haha, oops. I don't have to do anything about it. You do, because I suggested it. So, king g7 played, and it turns out that Mr. Principled Anish uses the concept of two weaknesses, f7, b7, to get an advantageous endgame with a passed d pawn, a weakness on a7, weakness on h7. Vishy creates a trade of rooks, but this endgame is winning for white. Rook a7, d7. Anish has two pawns up, but still Vishy is holding. That pawn's not moving anywhere, so white has to demonstrate some technique here to try to win this game. A4, rook e6, king f1. King e7, f3. How is the white king gonna cross over? King d8, king f2. Wait, what? Why did he? Well, here's the thing. If king e7 were to be played, what is the only way? If I tell you white cannot move the rook, white cannot move the pawn, white cannot move the pawn, white cannot move the king, who can move? Literally, who can move? The g-pawn. And after it takes, white would play here. That is how you activate your king sometimes. By sacrificing one of your pawns. The king just picks up the... Okay, now, just, you know, let the soldier sacrifice himself, and rook c6, and that's actually kind of what transpires. And on move 51, Vishy resigns. Anish Giri advances both pawns. And sometimes you guys ask me, like, why'd he resign? Well, first of all, white is up a major pawn. And second of all, I'm just going to walk with my king to either protect this pawn and check you, or to push this pawn. So, for example, rook f1, king e5. Rook e1, for example, like king f6. I don't know, b5? Because, of course, rook b5, king d7 is some chance for black, but even that, king g6, here, king f7. Oh, not to mention king h5. Now I have 3 pawns. So, very nice win for Anish. Honestly, very, very nice win. And Vishy has played very energetically throughout the event. And it almost feels like a last round, like blues a little bit. Just like he played very solidly. And I mean, Vishy's he could be a super aggressive and tactically like sharp player. So, I don't know. I guess he just wanted to be solid for the final round. But man, a really nice game from Anish. Really, really nice game. And that takes me to my final game of the day. And folks, this was a fun game. This game was like the equivalent of letting 2 children eat a ton of candy and run around an arcade. Okay? So here we go. First we have Ru Lopez. Don't worry about the opening. It already gets exciting because Shakhriyar isn't one of these guys who plays bishop e7, b5, d6, knight a5, knight b8 Breyer system, Chigorin system. He doesn't play any of that stuff. He plays this line where he takes on e4, b5, d5 like this man. He takes the pawn. He puts all of this is one of the ways to play the Spanish, the open Spanish, and he gets aggressive with it. Now, Jordan van Foreest is a very strong player, but he's tired, man. He is having a rough tournament. And he also has been playing, like, he's been playing some tournaments around Europe, like, and now he has to, you know, can play against these guys. He's having a rough event. So he is looking to end the tournament strong, and what better way to get an exciting game than Shakhriyar Mamedyarov, who takes on f2, rook f2, f6, and just, like, baits your king out into the open. Like, let's go. Let's have some fun. King g1 steps out of the pin. Normally, rook and pawn for knight and bishop is not very good. White should have the advantage here, but this is a very complex position. Black dominates the center. Very active pieces, bishop g4 and bishop f3. Queen d2. Oh, look at that fancy move, defending your own bishop. So now queen d6, gf3. And here, if you play the move rook takes f3, then you simply lose the game because nobody can protect this. Not the rook, and not the knight. And the worst thing is if you get this, I mean, look at this triple fork. Like, embarrassing. So, e4 from Shach. fe4, knight e5. He's coming into f3. So we play king h1. Prophylactic move. Knight comes in anyway, queen to g2. Now we guard this. Rook a e8, keeping the tension, but that allows the bishop to get out of the way. And this is a problem for black. Because now white will bring the knight and the rook, and white, because of the way black played this, and this is actually the reason that the rook and the pawn are not usually as good as the 2 pieces, is because white has an extra piece. Like, if you think about it, white has queen, knight, bishop, bishop, rook. That's 5. Black has queen, rook, rook, knight. That's 4. 5 is more than 4. Are we on the same page here? Do you get what I'm saying? No? All right, go back to school. c5. Knight g3, d4. Like, you see the problem? Even though a rook is worth more than another piece, when they're all together and fused and all coordinating, no one is sitting here like, rook is 5 points and bishop is 3, so I'm better. No. That's not how it works, because white has just more synergy among the pieces. So takes, bishop back to g1, and knight takes g1, queen g1. So again, it's now 4-3. The biggest asset of black is maybe this pawn, but if that pawn falls, it's going to be really, it's going to be bad. So queen f4, trying to just get rid of that pawn, but I mean, it's not so simple, because this would just be a draw. King g1, and I think there's some perpetual here. Yeah, rook d8. And if you sacrifice thinking you're getting a mate, check, blah, 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 blah. And obviously Jordan's like, nah, man, I haven't won a game this entire tournament. I am playing this for a win. Let me coordinate my pieces. Let me take. Now, position actually looks pretty good for Shak, though. He plays e5, g6, e6. Look at that pawn. Believe in yourself. Knight e4. Attacks the rook. Rook's gotta go. Rook f4, knight d6. And here Shak plays rook c5. Okay. Whose e-pawn is better? h4 to prevent rook g5. If you play rook takes h4, that's an option, but then my king can walk up. Shak plays this move first. Knight f7 attacks the rook. We have rook g4 check, king to h2. Rook e4. The funny thing is, this move just wins on the spot. I'm not exactly sure what Shak missed. I'm like looking at this, I don't know what he missed. Knight g5, maybe he thought this, but you can just take. Oops. So rook e4, rook d7, takes, now the king walks over, knight d6, what is going on? e2, uh-oh, but I can take with check. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. But then this, but then this, but then this. Who's winning? Well, it's black, but it's tricky. Knight e4, rook e4, king e4, e1, queen, king d4. Okay. Okay, who's winning? Because this is going to go here. This king is about to get hunted down. King b4, queen b4, king e5, a4. Bishop d5, queen b2 check. The king's gone. King is gone. Queen h2 check, king c6. What is happening? This pawn is a square away. Is this a draw? What? Jordan, you've got a pawn, dude. Move the pawn. Move the pawn. He plays rook a7, but now queen b8, and this is a big problem because the rook is hanging. If you take on a4, I have queen e8 check. That's the problem with the queen, is it's so strong, and now you're paralyzed. It's e7, but it's b3. If you take on b3, a3, this is still holdable. This is still holdable, but king d7 is not the way to go. ba2, no, no, no. If you queen now, then I can just take and make a new queen, and this is losing. You don't have safety net here. So rook b5, and we get this position, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I was kind of hoping that black would make a third queen, but you would think that materially speaking, I mean, somehow this is like in the balance, but it's just not, because all black needs to do is force a queen trade, and he does. I was really hoping that here we would get a3, a2, a1. That would be hilarious. And in a brutal fashion, Jordan van Foreest goes from a complex, topsy-turvy game, maybe a move or two, he could have had the initiative, to losing. And, well, I told you, this was like two kids, high off candy and sugar, running around an arcade. So with this game in mind and concluding, we take a look at our standings after 15 rounds of action. And here they are. Nepo, Šarić, MVL, Duda, Giri. 10 points out of a possible, 18? Because 9 rounds times 2. And Nepo with 11, a good amount of players with 9. Now, folks, tomorrow, Ivan Šarić substitutes for Garry Kasparov, former world champion, and arguably the greatest player of all time for many people. And that's going to be fun. That is going to be days of Blitz. There are going to be 9 rounds of Blitz every single day. Make sure to tune into the live commentary, or don't, because you get your GothamChess recaps. And I will see you all tomorrow as the legend comes back out of retirement. So, I'll see you then. Get out of here.